All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is October 18th, 2025. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And today, as you can see, I've got my good friend Matt Geiger from Verity Metals coming back. This is now our third show that we've done together. People have really enjoyed them. And it is a Saturday afternoon. Very much looking forward to getting Matt's take on a lot of different issues tonight. Most importantly, though, what's been happening in the precious metals market. As everybody knows, gold and silver are reaching new highs seemingly on a daily basis. Even since the last time we talked, we've seen record-breaking stuff go on. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to just kind of talk about the 40,000-foot view, everything else that's been going on. So, Matt, great to see you again. How you doing today?
Good, man. Good to see you, my friend. After this, I'm going to be going to we dressed up the truck with some American flags. We're going to go hit we have a train horn on the truck. So we're going to go by the protesters and give them a little action.
Awesome. Yeah, you got to get that on video. That'll be absolutely classic.
Well, yeah, I'll send it to you.
You know what? I've been meaning to ask you, Matt, do you have a presence on social media? Like, are you on X or Telegram or anything like that?
I have like a personal Facebook page. I just post funny memes for the most part.
All right. Yeah. All right.
You know, just dumb stuff. For the company, yeah, we're actually boosting our social media presence. You know, we're kind of an old school gold and silver shop, so it's not like, you know, we're trying to have this, you know, crazy presence out there. But we have a group of personal friends that are developing it for us. But yeah, you can find Verity Metals on, you know, Twitter, Facebook, you know, and if anybody else wants to go out there and follow us, you know, that certainly helps us get our, you know, our social media footprint out there. So, you know, we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, the other night I was just scrolling through X and I was searching for your name and I didn't see anything come up, but I didn't search Verity. I probably should have thought of that. But
I'm Metals. What am I on Twitter? I'm like Metals Matt or something.
Metals Matt. Okay.
And I'm Goldback one, the number one, Goldback one on Truth Social. That's my personal.
All right. I'm just going to jot those down so I can maybe put those in the description there, help you build up your presence online on social media. So like I said, man, there's just so much going on. It was, I believe, a few weeks ago that I had you on. And of course, we started the show talking about the pretty dramatic price movements that we've seen with gold and silver. And since then, it's just absolutely been mind blowing. The last time I checked, let me take a look at the chart really quick. Okay, so gold right now looks like it's hovering around 42.50 per ounce, and then we've got silver just under $52 at the start of the show. And because this is your area of expertise, and for those who don't know, Matt, for a very long time has been in the precious metals business. He broke off and started Verity. How many years ago? I can't remember.
Going on 2 years. Going on 2 years.
And he's really got, in my opinion, he's got the best business model out there. He's an absolute expert in this arena. So what I wanted to do to start out the show is just kind of let you have the floor and talk about what you've been seeing in the precious metals market. What are all the reasons for that? We talked about that a little bit last time, but it's always good to bring folks up to speed who maybe missed the last episode or the previous episode, but just lay it out for us. I mean, this must be a super exciting time for you personally that you've been waiting for years and years. And I believe you would probably agree that we're still in the very early stages of where we're headed. So let me pass it over to you, man, and just kind of give us
take it away. Very simple. So it's really been going on for years. I mean, these, you know, countries are straddling for position to try to hold gold and silver. They know what's coming. They know the inevitable. They understand that this fiat system is bound to fail. What they're betting on is the general public doesn't know that this system's about to fail. They just keep everybody's, you know, tunnel vision, people's eyes just right through the tunnel. So most people are not aware that, you know, 80, 100 banks over the last couple of years have gone into receivership, meaning they're bankrupt. A lot of people don't realize that the dollar recently has really started losing value. The Dixie, which is the statistic that shows, you know, the strength of the dollar, it's a bogus statistic, just like every other government statistic. Why? Because it's comparing the dollar to all the other fiat world currencies. You know, as I always say, it's like, who's got the better smile, the guy missing one front tooth or the guy that's missing both front teeth? They both have shitty smiles. Yeah. And that's the whole idea, is that they've been able to prop up a strong dollar just through comparing it to, you know, the euro or the yen, which are all garbage. So these currencies, you know, look at the debt out there. It's not just the United States that's in unpayable amounts of debt. And that's not even, you know, we could talk about derivatives in the quadrillions of dollars. But, let's just stick to the debt. The debts are unpayable. There's no way that we're going to be able to pay off these debts. It's going to be much easier for us to break down this system and start a new one. So that's really what you're witnessing. So when you see, the price of gold and silver starting to really shoot up the way you have, it's all these countries trying to pick up gold and silver. And the way gold and silver work is you have probably about 150 million with an M, million ounces that are traded physically on the COMEX. But the banks figured out a way to create not 150 million ounces. They created 2 or 3 billion ounces. So what's happening is the physical supply is diminishing. Right. And by the way, this is how they've been able to suppress the gold and silver price. Well, now that everybody wants to start demanding delivery, you only have 150 million ounces of silver to deliver from. So now the futures, right, which is, a separate entity, the futures are completely inaccurate. And now what's happening is the supply is drying up, and that's forcing the shorts. That's, essentially people are shorting the position. That's, somebody betting that the price is staying low. Now that all the actual physical is being taken off the market, it's naturally going up, and these shorts are getting killed.
Yep.
And what I heard recently from a friend is that, traditionally we've heard that JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citibank, they've been the ones holding the massive short positions. And they've been, this has been a scam they've been running for probably 30 years, probably even 40 years. The Hunt brothers did it in the 1980s, if people know that name. But essentially what's happening is, what I've heard, my good friend Jesse, who I'd love to bring on the show one of these days, he said that these shorts were absorbed. I think Trump made a deal and basically gave these shorts to the Federal Reserve. So these shorts, instead of killing the banks where everybody's money's in, and obviously we know Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, this is an evil organization that's involved in tremendous amount of criminal banking. We know that without a doubt, but Trump's doing the lesser of two evils and trying to save these banks instead of letting them fail, and right, everybody loses everything. He basically made these shorts go over to the Federal Reserve. And what's that going to do? That's going to take down the Fed. So when they say the phrase gold takes down the Fed, what they really mean by that is Trump just handed off these garbage short positions that are completely losing money by the minute. Okay. And he handed these off to the Fed. So as the price continues to go up, the Federal Reserve continues to get slammed. Why does that not matter? The Fed can just print up money as much as it could print $10 quadrillion, and they wouldn't have to tell us, but they can do whatever they want. So Trump's essentially using their own mechanism against them and burying them in these short positions while saving the general banking economy for people. So it's really, really interesting. So yeah, I mean, people that, have called this way, I mean, so many people from your show, other shows calling up this week, Matt, have I missed the boat? Not at all. You're probably going to see silver. You could see silver hit 75 or even 100 by the end of the year. Now, don't quote me, no one can predict that. No one has any idea. They could slam the price too. Who knows? But we know that if they did slam the price, it would be completely artificial, done through the paper markets, right? And that price would recover. And dealers are not going to sell at a loss. If anything, dealers are going to hold on to their inventory. So right now, thankfully over the last, probably entire time I've been in business, I've been really stacking inventory with my profits. I've hardly taken any paychecks. So we're sitting on tremendous amounts of inventory, whereas probably a lot of other companies either don't have inventory, maybe don't have certain products, or there's just going to be tremendous amount of wait time. Whether, let's say, you have an IRA or a 401k that you're converting, you got $500,000. It may not be that easy for a gold or silver company out there to fulfill that order right now. We can.
Wow. All right. Fantastic. Yeah. And so it seems to me as if what's really going on is that the confidence in the dollar has always, and the way that they've propped up the fiat dollar has always been the primary mechanism by which they've been able to suppress the price of precious metals. And ultimately what's happening now is that more and more, particularly foreign nations, are realizing that the fiat dollar is in some serious trouble. And that's putting it mildly. We're $37 trillion in debt, supposedly. So they're demanding that we know about, right? So they're demanding delivery on gold and silver, and that's having the effect ultimately of diminishing the supply, the real supply, not the paper supply.
Correct.
And that's why we're seeing the prices shoot up the way we are.
And premiums, people might see a $53 spot price. It costs me probably $6 or $7 over spot to bring in a silver eagle before I even make a dime. Mm-hmm. So, and the mint, just so people understand, and I love gold and silver eagles. I recommend it to everybody. I don't think a slightly higher premium on them is anything to bat an eye at. I would still buy them because of the right. We've talked about the monetary aspect of the coin. But these mints, the mint is a corrupt organization just like any other. And they're eventually going to have problems. And when that starts to happen, you're going to start to see premiums on silver eagles and gold eagles. You might even see them at twice the price of what silver actually is. And that'll apply to other products too. A lot of mints around the world have complained that they can't even get their hands on silver.
Yes.
So fortunately here in the United States, we have a pretty good silver supply still left. Whereas other countries, they're not as big as the United States. You probably can't even get silver, or there's tremendous amount of wait time to get silver right now. If you live over in, Great Britain or, Italy or one of these places over there, it might be unobtainable to even obtain any significant amount of silver at this very moment.
Yep. Laws of supply and demand. And we're actually seeing that play out. I saw a video out of, I think it was in Thailand, where people were just like
exactly in line for gold.
In line for gold. Yeah. And did I see, I think I saw correctly that gold now has a $30 trillion market cap. It was like the first time that's ever happened historically.
It's got a 30. I mean, there's a lot more gold, as we know. They say there's about 230,000 metric tons that they admit. It's probably 100 times that, which is fine. I don't think that's any reason to not buy into gold. That's not the point. But yeah, seeing the market cap of 30 trillion. I mean, I remember when it was like 9 trillion.
Yeah. I mean, that's massive. That is
it's massive.
Yeah, it sure is. So, so you've said in the past that you believe that, and using the metaphor, the last time we spoke, I asked you, like in terms of the ball game here, we're probably in like the second or third inning. Tell us, kind of take us through a little bit, like first of all, explaining why you think that is. And as the game continues, what are we likely to see as prices continue to rise with gold and silver? Because you had mentioned the possibility, even by the end of this year, we could see, again, speculation. Obviously, nobody has a crystal ball, but we could see silver shoot all the way up to $75, even $100. I'm curious to kind of get your projection as well, and as far as gold is concerned. Even Jamie Dimon recently came out and said under an environment like this, we could see gold go up to 5,000 an ounce. We could see it go up to, which it's not far off from. We could even see it go up to 10,000. So I'm kind of curious to get your short-term perspective on where you see the prices headed and the reasoning why. And then as we get deeper into the process, some of the domestic and geopolitical factors that might be continually driving the price up as we get deeper into the game.
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, nothing's real until you see it on the fake news, right? Nothing becomes real. So there's no problems in the banks until you see it on MSNBC. There's no problems in the banks until you see it on Fox News. There's no problems in the banks until you see it on CNN, right? And at some point, I think that they're going to have to start admitting that there's problems in the banking system.
It's all basically
they run cover, right? Historically, the news stations and the Wall Street Journal and all these different fake news organizations, they run cover basically for the Federal Reserve. You'll never see them say a bad thing about the Federal Reserve. But when things get so obviously bad in the banks, for example, what I might see in I'll be a great guy to talk to when that happens, because I'll probably be one of the people that sees it first. And this is how I see it. Let's say you have an IRA or 401k and you got $200,000 in it and you want to move that into precious metals. Maybe your bank starts telling you, hey, you can only move 10% a year out of the bank. That's where I think you're going to start to see it. And what I've actually noticed, and this is just very conspiratorial here, but this is something I actually noticed this week and last. This is very scary. I've noticed that the banks, all of a sudden, with certain clients that are trying to transfer their money, all of a sudden, their online banking doesn't work, or they can't obtain a statement, or they can't get through to this person, or they can't get through to that person at the headquarters. Just little subtleties like that. And you got to remember is that when this thing really does come down, do you think you're going to be able to call your bank and get your money out? Absolutely not. You have to do it while the coast is clear. You have to be preemptive and get this money out of there before the real warning signs start to hit, right? Because the old adage says, once everybody hears about it, it's too late.
It's too late, yeah.
So the way I see this playing out is they're going to start admitting more and more slowly. They're going to slow walk it, start slowly admitting the lack of liquidity in banks and the problems happening in the banks. I think that's going to coincide with probably something like this peace deal that Trump did, blowing up, Israel firing into Gaza and just everything starting over.
Yeah, it's not over by a long shot, I don't think.
It's not, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. So I think you're going to see something break out between, I think Europe's putting pressure on Ukraine to continue the war with Russia. I think Europe desperately wants that war to continue because they know that essentially the MAGA influence, the Make America Great, the 1776 spirit is coming to their shores. And right, you see it in places like London with the large rallies, the Charlie Kirk stuff. Right, you see that 1776 is spreading worldwide. And what do we see? What do we see with the head of the who is it? The head of the central banks, whatever her name is. This lady, we've seen her talk up there. She just got caught embezzling $400 million. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot of these officials, both in the United States and around the world. I think you're going to start seeing their bribes and their money laundering and their embezzlement schemes. And when that stuff starts to show up, that's where the average person's like, "Who the hell are you?" We're sitting here struggling to pay for groceries, and you're stealing money. You're making our monetary policy, and you're stealing $400 million from us. Right. So I think you're starting to get that 1776 revolution spirit amongst the people around the world. And I think that's what you're going to start seeing moving forward. And I think that's going to coincide with a lot of the banking stuff, because it's the type of chaos that they're going to need. They're going to use it to hide in that chaos and try to, as the government always does, problem, reaction, solution. They know that they've created the problem. They're going to get the reaction. And then they're going to try to come in as the heroes with the solution, but this time with the revolutionary spirit. They're not going to be the ones with the solution. It's going to be we the people with the solution, and it's going to be very different than what they want.
Yeah. Well, last time we had a really interesting discussion about what was going on in the world and really philosophically where I stand. And I was, talking to you a little bit about the whole concept of the degree of white hat control. And we kind of went back and forth with that. But I'm curious, do you see, I mean, just looking at the prices of precious metals and everything that you just described, do you see that as an indicator that the good guys are actually pulling the strings behind the scenes? Or because to me, it would seem logical that if the cabal state actually was in the type of control that optically we're being led to believe that they are, in my view, in this scripted movie, that we wouldn't be seeing this type of action with gold and silver. Like that their game would still be very effective in terms of propping up the dollar and using that as a way to suppress precious metals and hide the essential lack of I guess you could say substance in our fiat system. They've always historically been able to do that, but the fact that they can't seem to hide it anymore. I mean, this is historic. What we're seeing with gold and silver prices, obviously, gold is at an all-time high, and silver over $50. To me, it seems very unlikely that this would be happening in a circumstance where the cabal, the banks, and all of their their different nodes of control were actually still in place. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. To your question, no doubt about it. And I've always thought that from day one with Trump. And when I started to awaken in early 2018, I said, what's really the bank killer is really gold and silver prices, because these banks have such heavy shorts on them that literally the uptick in gold and silver price would destroy the bank. So all Trump had to do was make sure gold and silver prices started going up, start killing those shorts. And what did he do? All the bankers, probably every single head of every bank, came to him and probably said, "Save us, just please get us out of this." Right. And that's where they just completely capitulated to Trump. And from there, he could do whatever he wanted. So, yeah, I think the white hats are in total control of this. And I think, if you're somebody who's been following Q, you've been getting the inside baseball from day one. They've been telling you essentially get into gold and silver, get into this stuff. Right. Yeah. Trump's been saying it, just signaling it with the gold tie, the gold hair, with the silver, the silver linings in his hair. He's been communicating.
Yeah.
Yeah. The liquid gold under our feet. He's not just talking about oil. He's talking about the gold that's under the United States is sitting on tremendous amounts of gold. I mean, this is truly God's country with all the resources we have under our feet that have been hidden from us. We didn't even know this stuff existed our whole lives. And now it's coming to light. I mean, this country has so much wealth that we're sitting on. It truly is God's country. So yeah, to your question, I absolutely believe that the white hats are controlling this. It's a controlled demolition.
Right. Right. And as you talked about just a few minutes ago, what Trump has done behind the scenes in order to save the banks is to take all of these lousy junk shorts and dump them into the Federal Reserve. Can you talk a little bit more about that, like that mechanism and why it's been so effective?
Well, because if you take the short positions, if gold and silver prices continue to go up, they have to infuse money into holding that position. They have to make all kinds of margin calls and whatnot, right? So these are absolute disasters for these banks.
So they're
So it would
they're putting them on the Federal Reserve Bank balance sheet.
ledger. Yes, their balance sheet, exactly. So the Federal Reserve, it was what was supposed to happen had Hillary won was the complete opposite. The Federal Reserve was supposed to absorb all your property, home, real estate, everything. They were supposed to be the buyer and lender of last resort that the deep state could always depend upon for money, right? For the ability to buy stuff because they have unlimited budgets. So at the end of the day, what did Trump do? That's a signature. That's when you know it's Trump. It's a signature move. He's going to use the move that you used against him to take you down.
Jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, okay. So as we continue, and we're going to pivot here in a moment, talk about sort of the broader picture here, but just one other question, because a lot of folks have been speculating about the debt. Okay. So $37 trillion in debt, or so we're told. And there's a lot of different theories on that, whether or not that's actually a real number or whether that's basically already been taken care of behind the scenes and we're actually witnessing sort of the public rollout of all of this. But at the center of that question is the idea that gold and silver, gold particularly, let's just say being, I don't want to say revalued, but going up to, let's just say $10,000 an ounce or more, what effect that would have in terms of paying off the debt or having a significant impact on the debt. And then there's also been questions. I know we don't really get too much into the crypto stuff as well, but Trump very famously said that maybe at some point we'll write him we'll give him a little bit of a Bitcoin or whatever. He's made those types of statements. People have speculated that some of the major cryptocurrencies, particularly the ones that have already been identified as being part of the strategic reserve, et cetera, are going to have precious metals backing as well. Now, again, all this stuff is speculative, but I'm just very curious to get your take on that. So, the increase in pricing of gold and silver, precious metals, what effect does that have on paying down the debt in terms of our monetary system and policy? And also, do you see crypto perhaps maybe playing a role there? Is there some sort of a potential that it could be gold and silver back? We know that Bitcoin has been called digital gold for a very long time now. So I'm just curious to get you.
Yeah. So I probably have a very different viewpoint on this than most people.
Which
First
is great.
off, the debt was issued illegally.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
The country has been turned into a corporation in 1871.
Yep.
Right. So realistically, the debt doesn't apply to us. Right. The debt really doesn't apply to us at all. We're not responsible for the debt. It does have to be dealt with to some extent. And I do think, from what I hear, the country will go into bankruptcy as a corporation. The corporation will go into bankruptcy, and that will be sort of Trump's magnum opus, right? It will be his dealing with the bankruptcies. So for all those people who mock Trump for going through bankruptcies, we'll get the last laugh on that one because he's the guy that knows how to deal with it. We'll find out who the real creditors are of the United States. Countries like China, who we owe massive, tens of trillions of dollars to, most likely. They were the ones who started the whole COVID stuff. Trump even said at the time, and I think even 2020, he said, "Hey, you guys owe us $20 trillion for the loss of the United States. That's the loss number that happened in the United States was $20 trillion." So he's going to go to China and say, "Hey, we're not paying you." So now it's like, what are they going to do? Invade us? There's nothing they can do. So this debt is going to have to be dealt with between the countries. I think President Xi, Putin, Trump, I absolutely think the three of them are working. They have to be working together. Okay. And I think that these debts will be solved. Creditors will be made at least partially whole or enough whole so that we can continue the ship sailing. I'm not really too worried about the debts. And I also think that my belief is, people's, homes, property taxes will go away, income taxes will go away. And then to the last point of your question about cryptocurrencies, it's looking to me like Bitcoin is probably I think it is the deep state currency. I think it's the trafficking currency. I own some, and I'm not trying to knock it. Maybe there's some people out there that could sit down with me and completely, blow me away in a debate on Bitcoin. I personally like XRP. XRP, after I heard that the banks were getting all the short positions, that would say to me that Trump's going to do something to try to save the banks. And being that XRP has all the contracts with the banks, it would seem to me that probably XRP is probably a great place to be. So I would definitely say, get a position there. I do like to listen to Bix Weir, the Road to Ruta guy.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about Theta and Theta Fuel. I really think he's got some great points on that. Plus, he's been right on silver. So yeah, Theta and Theta Fuel. Theta's a little bit hard to get because I think it's out of Australia. So you need to do it. You need to buy it through a VPN. It's kind of a complicated process. So I would just say, go on, Coinbase or crypto.com or whatever, whatever it is you use, buy T Fuel, buy Theta Fuel. Probably Solana's a good one. But at the end of the day, I think gold and silver will be the last man standing. I think that they're going to be, the fundamental asset of what this country operates from.
Okay, excellent. And do you see any potential there that let's just say XRP, for example, could potentially be backed by precious metals? Do you think that's possible?
Absolutely. I think anything's possible.
Yeah.
From what I hear, everything's in flux. Like, in other words, I don't think we know exactly what we're going to be doing with our monetary system and exactly how it's going to play out. Everything's kind of fluid. But I would definitely position myself in gold, silver, XRP, and some of the other ones I mentioned, and probably a lot of other ones that I don't even know about that smarter people than me. I'm not a crypto expert.
No, I'm not a crypto expert either. And I've actually been a crypto skeptic. I think, as I shared with you a while back, I made some pretty silly decisions and I got burned. A lot of it was my fault, my own ignorance. That happens it happens to the best of us. But the more I research XRP and the way that I see that they're operating, and have already positioned themselves to really be the system, like the main highway or the rails of this new payment system that the White House, the White House, the White Hats, call it what you will. They keep talking about this. Every time they get into crypto, it's always centered around cross-border payments. And it's interesting because they very seldom they very seldom mention XRP and Ripple. They sort of talk around it, but we also know that a whole bunch of these NDAs that have happened. They acquired Hidden Road. They acquired the rail company. They just acquired, what was it, G Treasury. That's like over, I don't know, like I can't remember the actual numbers, but we're talking about trillions of dollars in capital now that are going to be flooding onto the XRP ledger. And you've got all of these ETF approvals set up for, I think they're scheduled. There was even one scheduled for today, although I don't think that's happening with a government shutdown and being on a Saturday. But Grayscale, I think, was scheduled for today. There's a whole bunch of big ETF approvals. But the biggest thing for me is looking at the Clarity Act, because once that gets codified into law and the rules and regulations and the massive market manipulation tools that they use in crypto right now, that the whales use to suppress prices and to do these pump and dumps. Once all that stuff goes away, the institutional investment comes off the sideline and they flood trillions of dollars into this new system because they stand to make an enormous amount of money, to save an enormous amount of money just by adopting this new technology. I mean, everybody knows that the SWIFT system, that archaic model, is going away. So I'm very bullish on XRP, but I've been curious because I've been hearing more and more rumblings about that the top ISO 222 tokens are all going to be backed by precious metals. So I was curious just to get your take on that.
I certainly hope so. And, at the end of the day, it just tells you that precious metals really are the foundation of what's coming. So you may as well be, we can't really say what's going to happen with the cryptocurrencies, but I think we could very confidently say with at least, a lot more certainty that gold and silver is a great place.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Right. And you have to remember too, that Trump's first entree into his real first entree into politics, the escalator ride coming down in Trump Tower, that famous moment there, right above his head, it said currency exchange, right? And we can never forget that that's ultimately that was setting the stage and foreshadowing what we're starting to see play out right now, which is basically tearing down the diseased temple and actually giving power back to the people in the form of having control over our money and no longer being debt slaves. And so one other question before we kind of pivot here. Another thing that gets brought up quite a bit, and I generally speaking don't get into it because I'm limited in my knowledge about it, but people have been talking about a currency revaluation, like the RV. You hear a lot of discussion about that. And I don't believe that you and I have ever spoken about it, but there continues to be a massive contingent of folks out there who are convinced that at a certain point we're going to start to see concrete moves to be made toward revaluing foreign currencies. A lot of people have heavy positions in the dong, the dinar, the zim bonds, etc. Again, I don't really talk about it all that often. Me personally, I remember when I was doing a series of shows with Dave XRP Lion. He kind of convinced me to to make a small investment in the zim bonds because he really believes this stuff's gonna be huge. I'm just curious to get your perspective on that. Do you think that that's legitimate? Some people think it's a scam. What's your take?
I have friends that are really into it and have bought into this stuff. I guess I haven't followed it enough or brought the expertise to be anybody that I could bring somebody on the show that would really blow you away with that stuff.
Yeah, next time if you want. Absolutely.
I don't want to comment on it because I'm very skeptical of it, but I could totally be wrong. And I wouldn't want to deter somebody who is getting great information from knowledgeable people. What I always tell people is like, even myself, like, give it a shot, put something into it, whether it be, zim bonds or dinar or whatever it is. Go take a position. It's like, hey, go take it. If you got $100,000, maybe you take 20 grand and you stick it into these different things, and you take the other, 80 and you stick it into something solid like gold and silver.
Yeah. No, gold and silver is the top of the pyramid, honestly, and that's what I've been saying really since the very beginning with my deciding that I was going to I felt strongly enough about gold and silver. I was like, okay, I'm actually going to promote this to my audience because I genuinely believe in it. I've taken these positions as well. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it never hurts to spread things around, to diversify, as they say, but it's like the golden rule. You never invest more than you can afford to lose. That's the way I look at it, whether it be as far as gold and silver, I don't think there's any issue there. But as far as cryptocurrencies, as far as foreign currencies as well. I mean, I've dipped my toes in a little bit here. I mean, I'm certainly not a rich man, but I've taken small positions in these things in the event that they might actually, because the truth is that we really don't know. There's a lot of mystery in terms of how this is all going to play out in the end. You could make the argument that this has been the most well-concealed aspect of the operation, is the economic reset, you want to call it.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah. All right, cool. I just thought I'd pick your brain on that. So let's pivot here and let's talk a little bit about the broader picture, and then later on in the show we'll bring up the website and we'll remind folks how they can get in touch with you. So we've got a lot going on. You and I were rapping about it a little bit before we were recording, but we've got round 2 of the No Kings protests this weekend, which you said you're going to go out and troll them, which is fantastic. I know you're in Arizona, so I mean, where in Arizona? I didn't even know that these people were. I mean, it's one of the most red states.
So they go over. So I'm over here in Glendale. Glendale's basically Phoenix, and then right next to me you have what's called Peoria.
Yeah.
So we're going to probably go down to, I think it's P83, which is Bell Road, and it's funny because my office is on 75th and Bell. On 83rd and Bell, they usually come down this corner. And I love going they got great restaurants there. I go there like a couple times a week. I know that they're going to be walking down the road that's P83. That's just like what they call the area. And, you're going to have some, Antifa types over there probably. And that's cool. I respect their, hey, they want to go out. Hey, the weather's nice. At least they're not sweating their rears off. But hey, if they want to go out and protest, that's fine. We're going to drive by with the truck. You have aux 1, aux 2, aux 3, and aux 4 in the truck. Aux 4, we call it aux 4. That turns on the train horn. So we're going to go by and give them a little train horn, and then probably go to one of the restaurants and have a nice brunch, because it's still the morning here. The afternoon for you, but it's still the morning here.
Yeah, well, like I said, if you could get some of that on film and share that with me, I would absolutely love it. But one of the things that I'm finding so interesting too is that as this, and I see this all as being primarily theater. That yes, there are admittedly these low level minions out there, these people who get wrapped up in all of this nonsense. And sure, from that perspective, it's all it's organic. Okay. That element of it, because there's always going to be people who are not really aware of the fact that they're having their strings pulled and being manipulated. But you can see it at the higher levels. It's quite obvious that the white hats are using this as an exposure operation. And I think there's multiple different aspects to it. Obviously, we've got the buildup to the Insurrection Act. I mean, we were talking about this last time, but now, I mean, it started out in DC as the model, and then of course it's spread, it's LA, it's in Portland, it's in Memphis. They just announced San Francisco is going to be the next place. There's been talking about Boston and so forth. So they're gradually, very, very systematically, but slowly, they're moving the military into these different cities. In the meantime, we've got all of this judicial tyranny popping up, which I think is also part of the show, to show people how corrupt the system is. They keep putting up these roadblocks, and then the higher courts are tearing them down. But there's been as far as the so-called No Kings protests, even Speaker Mike Johnson came out and said, oh yeah, these are all being funded by George Soros. And of course, we've also got Antifa, and the Q drops tell us that the mapping of Antifa began a very long time ago. So again, this is why I believe this is all just primarily fake. But the official designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization, which opens up the door to RICO charges, right? That's what they're really going for here, is to expose that these are not organic protests. They never have been. I mean, forget about the movie aspect right now. Even the ones that were quote unquote real, they were never actual organic protests. They were always funded by these NGOs with individuals like Soros at the top. And now that's become an open conversation. So that should be very interesting to see how they continue to sort of move the ball down the field with this next round of protests this weekend. Are we going to see massive riots, and is it going to really escalate, or is it going to be sort of more of a a steady burn until we get to that breaking point? So that's one thing that's going on. What are your thoughts on that, as far as where we stand right now with these continual protests and the rollout of the military and the designation of Antifa as terrorist organizations? Trump continually talking about the Insurrection Act. He has the controlled media, basically, and I think it's white hat controlled media, continually asking him about the Insurrection Act. We've got Pritzker, we've got Newsom, of course, we've got Brendan Johnson, all the usual suspects basically out there stoking the flames of civil war. They're basically, ratcheting up their rhetoric. So thinking about all of that stuff that's happening domestically, what are your thoughts on where we stand right now?
Well, isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that, the message is anti-billionaire, yet the whole thing is funded by billionaires?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, I think part of the white hat operation is to expose these billionaires who are funding essentially terrorism in the United States. That allows us to start taking a look at some of who these billionaires are. I mean, look at this guy, what's his name, from Salesforce, Mark, the CEO of Salesforce, Mark, not Mark Bennett.
I know you're not talking about Mark Cuban, are you?
No. I don't
know the Salesforce reference there. Let me go.
CEO Mark Benioff.
Benioff. Okay, I don't
Mark Benioff. So this guy Mark Benioff was in an interview a couple years ago, and he was talking about how there was going to be essentially DEI equity in investing. So if you were the average investor, let's say you had an IRA or a 401k, you would have to invest. You'd be forced to invest into, let's say, solar companies, right? Or some of these green energy companies. You'd be forced to do it because of the betterment of the world, right? And we know that these companies are nothing but failures. So this guy's part of some operation, some type of conspiracy to essentially take down the U.S. investor. This is the deep state. You're looking at him right here on the screen. So I think, in order to catch these guys, we got to get them into a guy like Mark Benioff. We have to get them wrapped up in criminality. So what better way to do that than track the money they're funding to terrorist organizations like Antifa, who probably will go burn down some cities by the time this is said and done. right? It's probably going to be what's the rumor? 17 cities that are going to burn to the ground by the time this is all done. So
Yeah,
at that point, then you have the criminality to take down these billionaires. I mean, let me tell you something. There's very few billionaires out there that are legitimately billionaires. You know, you mentioned Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban's the fakest billionaire I've ever seen.
Well, you said Mark, and when I hear Mark and billionaire, I think of either
you think of no,
or Cuban, or I knew you weren't talking about Zuckerberg.
This guy's a clown. Okay, this guy was basically set up to be a billionaire by selling his company to Yahoo, like what, 2 weeks before the whole thing collapsed, or a week before the whole thing collapsed. The whole story, it's like, oh, his timing was so good, right? Look at Warren Buffett. Who is Warren Buffett a mentor to? Bill Gates.
Yep.
Right. And then, so all these I'm telling you, all these billionaires, it's all fake. Oh, what would Warren Buffett do? People even in my industry, they say, oh, well, Warren Buffett said he's getting into silver now. It's like, shut up. I don't listen to any of these people. To become a billionaire is I think one true billionaire would be Donald Trump, because he did it through real estate. He owns some of the best real estate in the world. So Trump is actually probably one of the few billionaires that's legitimately a billionaire. And even then, probably when real estate prices come way down, he's probably not even going to be a billionaire anymore. He'll be multi-millionaire, but to be a billionaire, that's another level. And I think a lot of these billionaires are complete stooges, complete frauds and fakes.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to what we were talking about crypto a moment ago, I mean, Trump and his family have taken massive positions in crypto. So if it goes in the right direction, I think they're going to be very, very much okay as far as staying billionaires, even if the real estate market, really it tanks as well. And that's actually something interesting. I know we're kind of weaving in and out here, but we've been seeing more and more of these charts and reports come out about the exploding costs of home. Basically, home ownership. Nobody's able to even purchase a home, particularly young people. How do you see, and then we'll kind of segue back into that, into our conversation here about the protests, so-called protests, and then build up to the Insurrection Act, because I want to get back into that. But since you brought it up, the housing market, how do you see that playing into the financial element of things?
Oh, it's going to tank. The housing market's absolutely going to tank. Plus, you have all these illegals going to be thrown out of the country. They push up a lot of real estate prices and rental prices because, right, this is tens of millions of people that need places to live. So you're going to have a lot of vacancies. And I think, just in general with, just the economy going down, that's going to take down real estate prices as well. So I think anybody who's, considering buying a house, maybe at the moment, I'd say maybe hold off a little bit, maybe even stick that money into gold and silver, ride the gold and silver a little bit, and then purchase the house once everything are at absolute bottoms. Now, granted, look, if you find I had a client who had, and a good friend of mine, she had to sell, $50,000 of her gold the other day because she found literally her dream property on the beach, I think in Florida. And I was like, you know what, if it's your dream property, it's something you love, and it's a once in a lifetime event, that's a scenario where it's like, hey, happiness is more important than anything. Money's just a tool to happiness. And if that's what makes you happy, go for it. But I would just say, hey, if you're just somebody sitting on the sidelines looking to purchase some type of real estate, I would hold off till this stuff really starts to pop off.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course there's also the question about interest rates and everything along those lines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have lower interest rates moving forward, which is good, obviously good for home buying. But I think that there's going to be such a massive collapse that everything will be on sale by the time everything's said and done.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. All right. So let's kind of veer back into this conversation here. So again, we've got the Insurrection Act. This is something that I've had my eye on for a really long time. Especially going back to the beginning of January, where Trump came in and he had declared an invasion at the southern border, and even written into the executive order was certain timelines where he would be getting reports from his cabinet and different departments as to whether or not the declaration of the Insurrection Act would be something that would be appropriate and needed. And again, like I said, just about every time he has a press conference, he's asked this question, amidst the backdrop, of course, of the military deployments that we're seeing, the increased ratcheting up of the protests, the rhetoric, etc. Now, I've shared with you that I believe very strongly that we've been operating covertly under the Insurrection Act since January 6th of 2021. People can have their own opinions on that. We won't get into all of the reasons. I've certainly explained that to my audience many, many times. But the truth is that by the letter of the law, they don't actually have to declare it openly, which is very interesting. When I found that out, I was like, wow, okay. I believe this even more so now than I did before, when I realized that these types of steps, particularly the Insurrection Act, can be taken without overtly explaining to the public what's actually going on. In my view, we've been operating under continuity of government of some form for a very long time, and particularly the Insurrection Act back in 2021. But having said that, a vast majority of the people out there, even within the truth community, there are a lot of people who would say that's crazy. They don't even believe that we're actually under that. But I see a steady buildup to some sort of a breaking point. We don't know when that's going to come, but we're seeing a lot of different signs that the tension is really starting to sort of boil over. And at a certain point, you have to wonder, what's going to be the mechanism to get us there. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And also, I would add, just on a recent show, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Trump had an arch, a model of an arch on his desk in the Oval Office.
I didn't catch that. That's funny.
Yeah. So an arch, of course, is used to celebrate great victories, military victories. And we've also got the 250th anniversary of the Republic coming up next summer. Trump has said some very interesting things about 2026. Not to give people, I'm not trying to give people a sense of like, oh, I'm necessarily convinced that it's all going to be over by then. I hope and pray that it will. But it seems to me like we're rapidly approaching a boiling point where there's going to be, and what I've always anticipated, according to what the Q told us, is the military is the only way. There's going to be an overt, I don't want to necessarily say military takeover, but something that's going to look pretty much like temporary martial law scenario. And all of the pieces seem to be coming together, particularly with the military deployments, like I mentioned a moment ago. So, long-winded question, but I guess how do you view this? Do you think that do you see it the same way? Do you think we're building up to that breaking point? Do you think we're very far off? Any thoughts you have along those lines about the insurrection?
I'll say that I think there's going to be more Charlie Kirk style events.
Yeah, more false flags and stuff.
More
like that.
False flags, probably some assassinations. I mean, they tried to kill Trump. They technically did kill Charlie Kirk. They don't forget about Shibu Abe in Japan. They assassinated him a couple years ago. So I would expect probably quite a bit more of that. And it's interesting you mentioned the arch, because I didn't catch that, but I've heard that the arch is something that the satanic people use to bring in the demonic spirits into our realm. Have you ever heard that?
I have heard things along those lines. Yeah, I was talking really more in the sense of like, what they're traditionally known for, like the Arctic
right.
The different ones around the world.
Normal definitions of arches.
Normal definitions, yeah.
Not the freak definitions.
No, that's okay. No, we can certainly we can explore both of those. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but I think there's going to be definitely some chaos. I definitely think some cities are going to burn. What exactly happens? I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's interesting because, again, we follow all of these different storylines. There's like the geopolitical stuff that's going on. We just saw the quote unquote peace deal in Gaza. I think that's, I think you're kidding yourself if you're thinking, okay, we're going to have, a golden era of peace in the Middle East. I mean, at this stage of the game, because I've always said that the Zionist government, the really what is the head of the cabal, has to be brought down optically in some way, shape, or form before that happens. But putting that aside for the moment, we have this peace deal that's being billed as like, this 3,000 years in the making and on and on. But already Trump is making statements basically saying, if Hamas doesn't disarm, we're going to go in there and kill them and all these things. So that we got that going on. Israel is continuing to bomb Lebanon. And now there's this sort of pivot geopolitically to ending the wag the dog war. as I would consider it to be at this point in Ukraine.
No doubt.
So, he just met with Zelensky. So it seems like they're kind of pivoting more in that direction. So we've got the geopolitical storyline that seems to be continually building, a trade war with China, et cetera. And then we've got all of these different things that I talked about on the domestic front a moment ago, in addition to the big indictments. And it seems like all of these different storylines are being set up to converge more and more. So we had, obviously, Jim Comey, a few weeks ago now, 2 weeks ago, that he was indicted. And then we also had just last week, we had John Bolton indicted for basically, they say, mishandling of classified documents. He's being charged with 18 counts under the Espionage Act. That's some pretty deep shit to be in right there. And there is more and more emerging evidence that not only did he mishandle these documents, that I happen to believe that this is the direction it's headed, that he was engaged in trafficking intelligence. So we've got these big indictments. And by the way, there was also direct linking of Mike Pence to John Bolton as well. So it seems to me like that the massive web of corruption now, the dam is starting to break. So I wanted to get your take on these indictments and what they signify to you.
Well, it signals that, these guys are in a lot of trouble. Everybody connects to everybody. I mean, we know that James Comey probably most likely made a deal with the White Hats to give up information on Barack Obama, John Brennan, right? They probably all ratted on each other years ago. And we're just starting to see this stuff play out now. And what's nice is Trump has the optics, right? They tried to put him in prison. They made those, absurd felony charges against him, which, by the way, are being overturned in appeals courts. Eric Trump, poor guy. He's the most subpoenaed. He calls himself the most subpoenaed guy of all time. They've just kept him in courtrooms and, made his life as miserable as possible, and his entire family. Not to mention probably a lot of assassination attempts that we haven't even heard about. But yeah, I think that the coming indictments, we're going to see more and more of those. And the beauty is that they probably have hundreds of things that they could charge these people on, if not thousands of things. So I think what Trump's going to do is just continue to keep these people in court, just one after another. Oh, they found him guilty. They found him innocent on this. All right, we'll try him on this one. Oh, the corrupt judge finds him innocent on this. All right, try him on this one. And through that whole process, what are we doing? We're also getting through the corrupt judges, right? The corrupt judges are going to be exposed.
Yeah.
And that's a great awakening process for the general public to see, hey, your entire judicial system is completely upside down. That's a very scary thought because, hey, one day they come for Trump, the next day they come for you. So if they can do it to Trump, they can do it to anybody. And that's what these idiots on the left don't realize is like, hey, you may not like Trump, you may not like the things he says or the things he does, but at the end of the day, this can be weaponized against you at some point, and it will be. It will be. But thankfully, I think we'll get it solved.
Well, absolutely. And, you brought up a really good point. This is why I continue to point to the judicial tyranny that we're seeing on full display, because like you mentioned, this is the type of situation. I mean, right now I mentioned Bolton and I mentioned Comey, all right, and I happen to think that Comey actually is a white hat. I don't want to get into that whole conversation.
I've heard
that. But, in terms of his, he was a perfect guy inside of the FBI to set the stage for a lot of things that we saw play out, like Russiagate. He definitely killed Hillary's campaign in the final days. I mean, there's a whole litany of reasons. We won't get into it at the moment, but whether or not he's a white hat, leave that up to people to decide for themselves. But we've got Comey and Bolton, who I see basically as dominoes that are being set up to knock down bigger fish. Okay, not to suggest that these guys aren't big fish. They certainly are. And it's probably worth pointing out that we've been so conditioned at this point where, I mean, if either Bolton or Comey were indicted 2 years ago, I mean, heck, we would have all been doing like cartwheels in the streets. We would have been so happy.
Right.
So, we've sort of been conditioned at this point, like, okay, that's good news, but let's see where it goes, right? So we've got these indictments, but again, there are somewhere in the area of 600,000. This is a fact. You can look in the Pacer website and find it for yourself. But it is a fact that there are over 600,000 of these sealed indictments. Okay. And what we can see very clearly happening right now is that these high profile people, these dominoes that are being set up, are going to ultimately lead, like Q told us, one leads to the next, to the next, to the next. But in reality, if this was all going to play out in the civilian system, and this is one of the reasons why I believe we were told in no uncertain terms, military is the only way, or the only way is the military, it's because these indictments would take literally, I mean, we would all be dead long before all of these people were.
Yeah, 70 years to litigate this, right?
Yeah. So there's no way, in my humble opinion, that we might see the optics, and we're seeing the optics right now of this beginning to play out in the civilian system. But at a certain point, if you've got that many people, you've got a worldwide cabal, and you've got 600,000 of these sealed indictments, each one could potentially list up to 99 people. You're talking about millions and millions of people. The civilian system just simply couldn't handle that. And like I said, we'd all be dead and gone before before any of these people were actually face justice. And again, you know that I believe we're watching a replay anyway. But the point is that there has to be some sort of, and this ties into the judicial tyranny. It ties into the No King's protest, all of the domestic drama, even the geopolitical stuff, and the economic, all of these different storm clouds. In my view, Matt, in order for us to get to a place where we're actually going to transition and see the military actually formally take over basically the jurisdiction of all of these cases so that they can be tried swiftly, clean and swift, as we were told, we need to see a massive series of, well, I don't want to say massive series, but we need to see some scare events, kind of like what you were alluding to, more assassinations, more false flags, to the degree that it upsets the apple cart for the average person out there, like almost like a 9/11 type of a moment. I'm not talking about necessarily the same sort of event, but the effect of 9/11 brought the entire world to a standstill.
Trauma, right? Trauma.
So there's going to have to be that level, something that rises to that level, in my view, and it could be, again, a World War III scare. It could be a market crash that's Great Depression level market crash type of thing. It could be a massive series of false flags inside of the United States. Remember, Trump told us there was a 100% chance we were going to see a terrorist attack or a series of terrorist attacks stemming from the open border. So it kind of connects all these different dots in terms of like what's it going to take in order to legitimize this in the eyes of the average person out there. Because
the way it was explained to me, I don't mean to interrupt, but the way it's explained to me is that we're all under trauma-based programming. And if you introduce another, I forget how it was put, but what he said was, if you introduce another set of trauma, that can completely wake somebody up from this trauma-based programming that they have us under now. So take these, whacked out liberals, for example, who, are a death cult. You introduce a different set of trauma that completely counteracts that trauma-based programming that they're under. Effectively, they'll immediately wake up. And the older you get, the quicker you wake up. So, if you're, 15 or 18, it might be a little bit harder. Whereas, if you're 30, 35 or 40 or 50, it's pretty much instantaneous. You'll just wake up one day and be like, oh, maybe killing those babies is not such a great thing. Maybe I should head to church, So that's the way it's been explained to me. And I think we need events that will be the right type of trauma to counteract that trauma-based programming that we've been under. That's sort of that MK Ultra that they've been running on us our entire lives.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it so much in terms of like one trauma, in a sense, counteracting another one. I've always looked at it as a series of events that are intended to, and this is something that's been going on now for a very long time. I think we could all agree that we've been seeing the white hats, the way that they're rolling out all of these reverse psyops. It's all being done to create that cognitive dissonance, like inside of people's heads, right, where even the normies are going, I don't understand what's going on in the world, but one thing I can tell you is that things are not okay. And I'm pretty sure we've gotten to that point, but the problem is that we still appear optically to be very divided. And the whole purpose of this operation in the end game is to unify people around the awakening to this common enemy. Like, we're always going to have our differences. We're not all intended to see things exactly the same way. That's not what we mean by unity, but rather coming together around this revelation that holy crap, there's this secret enemy, there's this hidden hand, this deep state, this cabal, call it what you will. And by the way, deep state, that's become a household term over the past several years. Before that, it was a conspiracy theory. Now everybody accepts it. But what's going to be the real event that's going to unify people around and wake people up to this common enemy? Again, it's all speculation, but I believe that in order for us to get there, and in order for the military, for people, let's just say like 80% of the people, just to throw out a number, where 80% of the people are like on the same page, like, yes, we actually need we need this military intervention. Our system, our judicial system is broken. This entire government is being set up to insulate itself, to protect the elite, et cetera. And I think we're getting closer to that. But I also believe that it's a pretty big jump to see these cases that are playing out in the civilian system all of a sudden become military tribunals and so forth. We've been given a lot of hints along the way, but I think we've got to see. We're still bound to see these scare necessary events. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. You know, I'll just kind of break it down. Like, take climate change, for example, these climate activists. I would love to have these climate activists come on board to address the real climate change, if you want to call it that, or things like pollution and the real stuff. You know, the dumping of plastics in waters, the real, not this CO2 nonsense that the deep state's pushing. I think of these these little jackasses in the museums where they throw oil onto the old Van Gogh paintings. I'm a huge fan of Van Gogh. They go and then they stand there and they start talking. You just sit there like, you little rats. Like, I'd love that energy being used toward the real pollution of the earth, right? I'd love to have those people understand who their real enemy is and use that energy and that boldness that they have to not do some stupid thing like throw oil on a 200-year-old Van Gogh painting, or rather than actually going and addressing chemtrails in the sky. Go use that energy for addressing that stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And it reminds me once again of that jujitsu metaphor of, we've got all of this tension that's building, right, but it's still under the optics. I mean, again, going back to this whole no kings thing and all of these, these libtards out there who still think that, is still programmed by this deep state, mentality, who haven't really woken up to the fact that they're being manipulated. But taking all of that energy and having an event or a series of events, being able to transfer that energy in the right direction and kind of unify everybody around it. And it could play out in a million different ways. I mean, one of the ways could be the revelations about the jab, the vaccines. It could be.
That'll definitely be a catalyst. That'll definitely be a catalyst.
Yeah, I think so. And we were told in the drops that crimes against children are going to unite. People, obviously. And that, the shot heard around the world, I think we talked about that could mean multiple different things. It could be, in reference to the jab. That's something that everybody, either for yourself or for your kids or, your loved ones, we've all been in some way affected by this depopulation agenda. So that could be a big catalyst. But on the surface, again, it seems like there's still a lot of division. There's still a lot of hatred. We're seeing all of this, these anti-ICE. And again, I could see how a lot of people would think this is real. I see it as primarily being manufactured. But again, having said that, there are a lot of people out there who still are kind of locked into this mentality of not, knowing something is wrong, but not knowing who the real enemy is. And that's what I'm anticipating, is some series of revelations, events that lead to revelations where people finally go, oh my God, like, and the wool's been pulled over their eyes and they finally see the truth. I mean, how we get there, I don't know, but it certainly seems like there's a lot of information that's coming out now that's very rapidly pointing us in that direction. So
it's encouraging.
It is encouraging. And like I said, I mean, on a previous show, what better time to wrap up this war right in time for the 250th anniversary and the Arch and all the stuff that we're anticipating. So it seems to me like we're getting pretty close to all that.
Best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come. Absolutely. All right. Well, like I said, I wanted to kind of circle back a little bit here to where we began the conversation, and just let everybody know. I mean, we're transparent here. There have been a number of folks from the audience who have contacted you, and I've been just about every day. I mean, I've just been so excited by what I've seen with the movement on precious metals that, I've been posting on social media and mentioning this in my other videos. Like, you really got to call Matt and talk to him, get him on the phone, because this is a wave that you don't want to miss. So let's talk a little. Let me bring up the landing page that you guys created, and have you talk a little bit more about Verity, talk a little bit more about what it is that you do differently, how you operate, and why have so many people been calling. And not only that, the people that have already done business with you, why are they so satisfied? I mean, it's pretty amazing, and it makes me feel really good, I have to be honest with you. But there are a number of people out there who have contacted Matt, they've done deals with them, and they're just they're so thrilled. In fact, some of them are even coming back and doing secondary deals because they see what an upfront guy you are. So talk a little bit about your business model and how folks can get in touch with you.
Well, we are getting a little help from precious metals prices. So everything everybody's buying is only going up so far. So that helps.
Yeah, sure.
I won't take the credit for that, but yeah, we're a little, gold and silver shop here in Glendale, Arizona. This is sort of my home studio here, but we people can come in, they can buy, sell. I work throughout the United States, so we can ship stuff to people. It's FedEx, UPS, fully insured, so you don't have to worry about signature required. You'll get tracking, but I think what I do differently is just in general, I put people, I think, in the right stuff, which is U.S. coin, gold American Eagles, silver American Eagles. I think that's the best decision. I've had a lot of people come to me say, Matt, I got these bars or these other foreign coins that I want to switch into gold or silver Eagles. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But I try to give people advice so they're not paying another loading cost. Just because anytime you buy precious metals, you're going to pay a premium. Right. Most of that premium doesn't even go to me. It goes to the wholesale. So I just try to give people good, honest insight. And then when it comes to the IRA stuff, we can put you in one of the depositories, right? We can move the gold or the silver to one of the standard depositories. Nothing wrong with that. But I also do offer the self-storage option where we build an infrastructure for you where we would actually ship, instead of shipping that gold and silver to a depository somewhere to your vault, we would ship it directly to your doorstep, just like you would a cash purchase. Right. And I do tell people, like, you're really not supposed to store the stuff yourself. But, we'll try to help people locate, for example, a storage facility that's local to them. Not every state has, ample access to depositories. So depending where you are in the country, and I help people. I help them find, where those depositories are located. So, hey, you got a place, a half hour, an hour away from your house that you can go store your IRA gold and silver at. Now you have direct access to it. So if you ever really needed to access that on a moment's notice, you could absolutely do that. It's not somewhere across the country where, you don't see it, you can't visit it. So depending on where that person is on the spectrum, we can really tailor the solution. And no other company does that, by the way, because it's a lot of extra work that we have to do there. But I'm happy to do it because I know, especially in our community, there's a lot of skeptical people out there. There's a lot of distrust between, people, financial institutions, people and their banks. So I just want to be able to, meet people on their own comfort level. And I think we've been really good at doing that. So yeah, that good product decisions and great prices. We don't, some of these gold companies, Patriot, darn well what these companies charge. I've shown you invoices, and some of these gold companies out of Los Angeles, let me tell you something, they're charging 100 and 200% premiums. It's disgusting. It should be illegal. These companies should be in jail. Their brokers should be in jail because they know what they're doing. For me, I operate on a tiny fraction of what the amount it is you're putting in. As I always say, I don't want grandma's money. Grandma needs her money. She needs to have it. I'm not ripping grandma and grandpa off. They work their whole lives for that. And then some gold company is going to come around and take half their money from them in commissions. It's disgusting. I'm surprised. I'm surprised Trump hasn't stepped in and really done something legislatively to prevent these companies from doing it, because these guys are just making money hand over fist. I make a great living. I get great referrals. Everybody's happy with me. My reputation is more important to me than any money you could ever pay me. And we're going to keep it that way. And I think that's why we work so well together, is because, you're an honest guy. You're out there bringing the truth, bringing the news. And, you thought enough of me and Verity Metals to come on here and service, your audience is the salt of the earth. We want to help these people. We don't want to hurt these people. So just, whether you go to me or, a local guy out there, feel free, hey, you got a local guy, you want to pick up a couple, silver Eagles, gold Eagles at a local, go support the local dealer. I encourage that too. But if you want to, support the show, support my company, Verity Metals, come to me. We'll take care of you. We'll tell you the truth, and we'll do everything at a great price for you.
Right, right, and that's exactly what appealed to me so much, is that I've learned a lot since I first started getting into promoting gold and silver, and obviously there is not a lot of regulation that goes on.
Zero.
So therefore, you have to be you have to be careful. And honestly, I love Matt's approach to all this, because I could tell right from the beginning that he's doing things the right way. He's steering people toward the right type of investments. He's fair. He's not looking to rip anybody off, and that ultimately is what matters most to me. And being able to present that to my audience, it feels really good. And certainly knowing that the feedback that I've gotten so far from people has been just stellar. It it kind of just underscores that. It's like, all right, I made the right decision. I linked up with the right guy. And once
We
again,
want to make you look good. We want it to be a win for the client, a win for yourself and your podcast, and a win for Verity Metals. And that's the way business can and should be done. It should be a win for everybody. No one should ever get the short end of the stick. And I want to take care of these people. These are our soul family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've been doing that. Like I said, I mean, lots of folks out there have already reached out to Matt. So, like I said earlier, we're still early. We're very early in the game. Third inning, if you want to go use that metaphor, Matt, I think is about right. Second or third inning in terms of where we're headed. But and you mentioned this a little bit earlier as well. It's not too late. That's the thing that everyone needs to realize, is that even though you're seeing gold go up, silver go up, I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. On the one hand, people see that and they kind of get the FOMO, and it kind of inspires a lot of people to jump on board. But it can also have the opposite effect on some folks, as saying, well, it's already gone up, I missed the boat. And Matt will be the first one to tell you that that's not true. You have not missed the boat. This is really just the beginning. And historically, gold and silver have always been bare minimum great stores of value. But now, like we talked about earlier, and Matt went through a lot of the reasoning behind it, we're entering into an entirely different era, a historically unprecedented era, at least in our lifetime. And I would probably argue for generations now. I mean, we haven't seen anything along these lines in terms of the role that gold and silver are going to be playing. Constitutional money. That's really the bottom line. God's currency, constitutional money. And no matter where you approach from what angle you approach the discussion, it always seems to lead back to precious metal backing. And that's the new era that we're walking into right now, this golden age. So now is the time to really get on board. And like I've been making the case all along, the guy on your screen right there, best in the business. I mean, he's going to tell you exactly, he's going to tell you the truth, bottom line. Okay. Whether or not it's, even if it means, leading you in a different direction, or saying, you might want to, hold on to what you've got or whatever. Matt's going to tell you the truth, bottom line. But he's also going to be able to discuss with you what your different options are, and I think having that at least for somebody like me, like if I'm going to be making any kind of sizable investment, I want to make sure that I'm talking to someone that I can actually trust, or I feel like I can trust, and somebody who's knowledgeable, somebody who makes themselves available to people. And that's one of the things that I think is really great about your business model as well, is that you don't, you're not just some like guy that I mentioned that nobody really gets to know and see. That's why I'm having Matt on the show, so folks can see.
And notice no other gold company, with the exception of maybe one or two, none of them ever come on shows and actually show their faces. They just do ad reads. They don't want to be seen because they're ripping people off left and right. We want to take care of people. And I appreciate the kind words, man. It's like, it's an honor dealing with the Patriot community. It's our family. I really feel that in my heart, and we'll do a good job for you. And by the way, if anybody out there, if you're kind of on the sidelines because you need, security solutions, ideas of how to store stuff at home, I have a whole realm of expertise on that as well. So, building fake walls, safe companies, where you can go get a good quality safe and whatnot. So if that's stuff that, you need some input on, I'm happy to talk to you about that. And by the way, just one other thing, you can go on my website and you can actually go right into my calendar and schedule an appointment basically anytime you want. I'm on Pacific time. So those who, if you were the one who this week had a few people scheduled like 5 a.m., I'm still in bed at 5. I'm usually up by about 6. So just realize I'm on Pacific time for the moment. So yeah, just I'll try to reschedule if you do that by mistake. But yeah, you can put yourself right on my calendar, and I'll be there on the Zoom call, and we can meet just like we are right now on the show, face to face, and we can chat it up.
Beautiful. I love it. So yeah, and that's, the self-custody thing is absolutely huge for a lot of people out there.
It's a game changer. Yeah, it's a game changer.
Total game changer, because even when I was when I came out and I started doing advertising and partnering up with another gold company, it was like that. That was one of the big questions that I got, which is like, can I actually buy it from them and just hold it myself? And because you know how it is. You talk to people every day. People really want to have the gold and silver like in their hand. They want to feel like they're in control of it. And if somebody else is in control of it, they don't really feel like they own it. And
exactly.
That was the big prompters for me to start looking in opposite directions, to try to find somebody out there who was honest, reputable, well-informed, but also somebody who could provide that service to people, because that was primarily the biggest objection that I ran into from my audience. Is like, I want to be, and you can do anything. Matt can do anything with the self-custody option, the IRA rollovers. If you just want to make a purchase, however big or small, he does it all. He's like a one-stop shop. So
yeah, somebody's got $100. Hey, you get treated the same as the guy with $1 million. So it's all the same to me. Yeah. And what's nice is I'm one of you guys. I'm in the community. I'm watching the same information you guys have been watching. I've been following the Q movement since it started. Early 2018 is my awakening. And you're dealing with somebody that's in the movement. You go call one of these companies out of LA. They're gold brokers by day, and they're trying to be Axl Rose by night.
Yeah.
So just be leery.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that transparency, I think, is really what it comes down to for people. And for me as well. I like to deal in that environment where people are transparent. They put, they put themselves forward. They're willing to answer questions. They're willing to engage with people directly. It's not a bunch of smoke and mirrors. So really comfortable with this business.
Thank you, it's an honor.
We made together. Verity Metals. I brought up the webpage. You're going to see the link to that in the description of the video. And once again, I had this on the banner here. I'm pretty sure this is still the right contact number, 888-470-7018. And that'll get you in touch with Matt.
Yeah, and once you come in, I'll get you my cell phone so you can reach me 24/7. So I'm very reachable.
Right?
Yeah, I'm there for people. Saturdays, Sundays, whatever. It's a lifestyle, but I enjoy it, and I enjoy it because I deal with great people. And I'm blessed for that. I don't have to deal with a bunch of these libtards. And I would. If they call me up, they get taken care of too. But I'm fortunate that I get to deal with an audience like yours. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So we're gonna have you back on probably a couple 2-3 weeks. We'll see kind of where we're at that stage. But hopefully folks out there will give Matt a call. Even if you're on the fence, you're not really sure, maybe I want to invest, I'm not sure. He'll have that conversation with you. So, give him a ring. He's a great guy to talk to. And also, like I said last time, and I think the time before, it's great because I can have you on and we don't just talk about precious metals the whole time. We're talking about the big picture. And obviously Matt and I, we have a lot of the similar views in terms of how this is playing out. So great to have you on again, man. We'll have you on again, like I said, 2-3 weeks. In the meantime, folks, make sure you give Matt a call. Verity Metals, best in the business. And I will be back on a Monday with the great Mike King. And then later on in the week on Thursday, I'm going to be hosting. Actually, I don't know if I'm hosting. I think I'm hosting, but it's going to be myself, your good friends, Lewis Herms, and Joe and Scott from Truth Stream. We're going to get together and do a roundtable. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Tell them I said hello.
Yeah, we'll do. All right. Well, have a great weekend, Matt. Everybody else out there, have a wonderful weekend. And
thanks, guys.
We'll see you folks soon. God bless. Godspeed.
God bless.